Hi, I'm Bill Snodgrass. Welcome to this episode. If you are watching this episode on YouTube, you can go down in the description section and see links to the podcast version. And likewise, if you are listening to this on the podcast and would like to see the video, hop over to youtube.com/Bill Snodgrass and you can see the video of this. In this episode, I'm going to talk about controversial weight loss ideas. They're controversial in a sense that I don't really hear many people talking about these things. And these things are just pretty much the way that I went from Dad-bod to this. Not that I'm like in a great physical specimen or anything, but I went from Dad-bod to somewhat much more healthier and a very, relatively easy path. What are these things? Most of them are psychological matters. That's probably why you don't hear a lot about them on fitness and wellness channels. One, however, is biology. It's a science matter. It's just science. There's a science aspect to weight loss. And that science aspect is this. You got to burn more calories than you take in. Now, people go like, oh, well, I don't count calories. I count proteins. And, well, I don't count calories. I count fat grams. I don't count calories. The body converts everything into one of three things. When you eat something, it breaks it down into the building blocks for your body, muscle, fiber, tissue, all those amino acids and proteins, or instant short-term potential energy or long-term potential energy. Long-term potential energy is fat. Short-term potential energy is stored in the muscles, and adenosine triphosphates is something that's going on there. So it doesn't matter what you take in. The body is eventually going to convert it into either energy or building blocks for the body. So if you take in more than you need, it's going to be stored for long-term potential energy. It's going to be stored as fat. It's going to store it somewhere. Wherever your body likes to store fat, that's where it's going to go, because you never know when there's going to be another giant plague of I don't know what. The body doesn't know if you're going to have food next week. So if it has extra today, it's going to save it. Now, then the rest of these things are more psychological. And that's probably why I don't hear a lot of people talking about these psychological things. Number one, this goes right back into the very first one. Portion control. Portion control. We were kind of programmed in the Western culture that, clean your plate. And I know a lot of people are trying to get away from that. Well, if you're going to be one of those people who adhere to clean your plate, then you need to start with less. If you start with less, you will consume less. And if you consume less, we're back to that first thing, that cycle of fat and stored energy and all that. So you need to consume less, and that is portion control. And there's a million ways to count up that portion control, but the less you intake, the less you're going to store, the less you're going to have to store. The body's going to convert it into what it needs, and then whatever's left over, if you don't have a whole lot left over. So portion control, and there's a psychological aspect to that, where when we see a plate full of food and we feel like, well, I'm not getting my money's worth. If you go to the fast food restaurant, you get the jumbo combo because it saves you some money, and then you're sitting there looking at about a half a pound of French fries. You don't need a half a pound of French fries. All right, so portion control. Portion control. Number two, get a smaller plate. When we take that smaller sandwich and that small portion of potato chips and we put them on a smaller plate, psychologically we see that and it looks like, hey, we got a full plate here. This is going to be great. And we begin to satisfy our psychological need to eat, because eating is one of those things that is a human. It's a human drive for food. It's beyond psychology. It's organic. It's built into us. We want food because without it, bad things happen, like we die. So, smaller plate. Our mind sees that and goes, "Whoa, that's looking. Woo, I don't know if I need all that." Now, my mind never says that, because my mind's like, "You just put that on a smaller plate." But I'm okay with that. So put it on a smaller plate. Number two, one bite at a time. One bite at a time. What are you talking about? I've seen people who they'll put that quarter pound in their mouth, take off a big bite, and then they'll shove a handful of French fries in. And then before you know it, 10 seconds later, their whole meal's gone. Part of the satisfaction of eating is that there's a biological, chemical, psychological process that leads to satisfaction. And if you rush through all the food, that process never quite gets full speed going, and you finish your meal and you're still not satisfied. So slow down. One bite at a time. Take one bite. Take a small bite of your cheeseburger. And then take one French fry. Now some of you are gonna go, oh my gosh, this guy's crazy. Bite it in half. Chew it. That's the number 3. Chew your food. There is a psychological response to chewing that eventually leads to that satisfaction that our body wants to know that we don't need to eat anything else. So eat slowly. Chew your food. Chew until you get bored chewing. I'm pretty sure that there's nothing bad about chewing more than you need to chew. So chew until you're like, I don't want to chew anymore. Chew as much as you can. The more you chew, the more satisfaction you're going to get from the meal. Now here's the one that most of you are going to go, no way, I'm not doing that. Most of you are going to rebel at this. This is where the real controversy comes in. Don't do anything except eat. When you're eating, focus on eating. Make it into the event for that period of time. That means put your phone down, turn the TV off. Now you can have conversation with other people. You can have a nice dinner meal where you're talking to people, but it is the dinner meal and the conversation is secondary. If you're watching the football game and you decide you're going to eat in front of the football game or the basketball game or football, soccer, whatever it is, hockey, baseball, all right, I think I covered all the seasons. If you're watching a sporting event and eating, you're focusing on the sporting event and you're not focusing on the food, and so you just eat it and there's no psychological satisfaction to that. So let's run through that really, really, really quickly again. Smaller portion, that's going to control the calories in. Smaller plate, that's going to psychologically prepare your mind that this is going to be a satisfying meal. One bite at a time, one food at a time. The longer you can prolong the eating experience, the more satisfied you're going to be. Small bites, chew them. Chewing prolongs the eating experience, and chewing also triggers that satisfaction. And last, this is the one I tell you, the people are going to go, nah, I'm not putting my phone away during a meal. Just focus on the meal. The more attention you can pay to the food that you're eating, the more satisfying it's going to be. Those are my controversial weight loss tips, and part of the way that I got rid of, pretty much the whole way. I didn't exercise, that's for sure. I didn't exercise. I just basically cut back on what I ate, and the way I managed to continue and do that for the months that I've been doing it, and the way I did it the first time when I lost the 60 pounds, is that those things, smaller portion, smaller plate, chew the food one bite at a time, concentrate on the food, let it satisfy you, let the smaller portion satisfy you. I've worked a Cliff Bar, 250 calories. I've worked a Cliff Bar for like 15 or 20 minutes. But that was a snack and not a meal. But the longer you can work that little piece of food, the more satisfying it's going to be. That's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Please click the like button, share, subscribe, all those kind of things. Leave a comment if it's available. Depends on what player you're listening to it on. That's all for this episode. I will see you in the next one.